Have you ever wondered what the size of your testicles actually means? It's something a lot of guys think about at some point, but not many talk about openly. Maybe you've looked in the mirror and questioned whether size matters when it comes to testosterone or fertility. Or maybe you've heard some myths, like bigger testicles mean you're more manly or more fertile. So let's set the record straight. Today, we're going to unpack everything you need to know about testicle size in real, simple terms. We're cutting through the noise, tossing aside the myths, and diving into what medical science actually says. By the end of this, you'll understand what testicular size can tell you about your health, and just as importantly, what it can't. Let's start with the basics. Your testicles have two main jobs. Think of them like a small factory with two different departments, each working around the clock. One department is all about making sperm. This is the fertility side of things. The other department is in charge of producing testosterone, your body's primary male hormone. Testosterone affects things like your sex drive, energy levels, muscle mass, bone strength, and even your mood. Now, even though these two jobs happen in the same place, inside your testicles, they're carried out by completely different kinds of cells. And more importantly, they take up very different amounts of space. That detail is crucial when we're talking about size, fertility, and hormones. Let's look at sperm production first, because this is where size actually does matter. When doctors refer to the size of your testicles, what they're really talking about is how much internal machinery you've got going on in there. And believe it or not, about 95% of your testicles volume is made up of something called seminiferous tubules. These are tiny coiled tubes where your sperm is born and matures. These tubes are lined with cells called germ cells, which are the raw ingredients for making sperm. So basically, the more space you have filled with these tubes, the more potential you have to make sperm. It's kind of like this. Imagine a car factory. A bigger factory can fit more assembly lines, and with more assembly lines, you can produce more cars. In the same way, a larger testicle has more sperm-producing tubes and can generally create more sperm. On the flip side, smaller testicles have less of that machinery, which usually means a lower capacity for sperm production. And this isn't just some theory, it's actually a basic rule in reproductive health. When a couple is having trouble getting pregnant and a doctor checks the male partner, one of the first things they'll do is measure the size of his testicles. If they're smaller than average, it can be a sign that sperm production isn't working the way it should. There's even a name for this: testicular atrophy. That's when the testicles shrink and lose function. One common cause of this is something called a varicocele. It's kind of like having varicose veins, but in your scrotum. These swollen veins can raise the temperature in your testicles, which messes with sperm production. Over time, this stress can actually damage the sperm-producing tubes and make the testicle shrink. That shrinkage often comes with a lower sperm count. So, what's the big takeaway here? When it comes to fertility, testicular size is a meaningful clue. Larger testicles usually mean a higher capacity to make sperm. Smaller ones might point to issues with production. That doesn't mean you're infertile if yours are on the smaller side, but it's something worth checking out, especially if you and your partner are trying to have a baby. Now let's talk about testosterone. And this is where things get a little tricky and where a lot of myths live. A lot of people think that if larger testicles mean more sperm, they must also mean more testosterone. But that's not how it works. Remember how 95% of your testicle is made up of sperm-producing tubes? Well, that only leaves about 5% for the cells that make testosterone. These cells are called Leydig cells, and they're scattered in the small spaces between those sperm-producing tubes. And here's the important part. Since testosterone-making cells only take up a tiny amount of space, the size of your testicles doesn't really tell you much about how many Leydig cells you have or how well they're doing their job. You could have big testicles filled with sperm-producing tubes, but not a lot of functioning Leydig cells. That means you could still have low testosterone. On the other hand, someone with smaller testicles might have a small number of Leydig cells, but if those cells are super efficient, their testosterone levels could be totally normal, or even on the high side. Testosterone production isn't about how much space your testicles take up. It's about how well those tiny cells are working. And that's controlled by signals from your brain, not the size of the organ itself. So, if you're wondering about your testosterone levels, staring in the mirror or comparing yourself to someone else won't give you any real answers. What will give you answers is a simple blood test, and that's the only reliable way to know what your hormone levels are doing. Now, while we're on the topic of testosterone, I want to bring up something that's probably on your mind too: performance, sexual performance to be exact. Things like libido, energy, getting or maintaining strong erections, all of that ties back into testosterone. And naturally, when something feels off, it can create a lot of stress. There's actually some really interesting research and natural solutions out there that don't involve pills, injections, or devices. I came across a simple 7-second home remedy that gets to the root of performance problems without the usual risks or side effects. If that's something you're struggling with or just curious about, I've linked to a short, free video in the pinned comment. It explains how it works and why it might be worth looking into. But coming back to today's topic, let's wrap up with a clear, practical message you can walk away with. Testicular size doesn't define your manhood. It's not about status or confidence, it's about function. And the function is split into two jobs: sperm production and hormone production. When it comes to sperm, size can matter. If your testicles are on the larger side, they probably have more machinery to make sperm. If they're noticeably small or seem to have shrunk over time, that's worth paying attention to, especially if you and your partner are trying to conceive. It might be the body's way of signaling that something's off, and a doctor can help you figure out what that is. When it comes to testosterone, size doesn't mean much at all. The real signs of low testosterone show up in how you feel, not how you look. Things like chronic tiredness, a drop in your sex drive, trouble maintaining an erection, losing muscle, gaining fat, or feeling down for no clear reason. Those are the red flags. And again, the only real way to know is through a simple blood test. Guessing based on appearance won't get you far. So, if you've been feeling off or just want to know where your levels stand, talk to your doctor. There's no shame in it. In fact, being proactive is one of the most responsible things you can do for your health. So, to sum it all up, yes, the size of your testicles can tell a story, but that story is mostly about your fertility, not your testosterone levels. Bigger doesn't mean better, and smaller doesn't automatically mean something's wrong. It's all about knowing what to look for and getting the right guidance when something feels off. If you're ever unsure or have concerns, whether it's about fertility, hormones, or anything else related to your health, don't sit in silence. Speak with a healthcare provider you trust. That one conversation can give you the clarity and peace of mind you've been searching for. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If this video helped clear things up for you, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about giving you real, judgment-free info that helps you take control of your health. Got a question? Drop it in the comments. I read every one of them, and I'm here to help. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.